Previously on The Revolution, Mohawk chief Joseph Brant joined forces with the British and led violent Iroquois raids on the rebels.
Joseph Brant said, we have to join with somebody, because somebody's going to win.
And revenge is demanded.
If the idea was to destroy Indian resistance, it didn't work. The warriors had nothing left to live for other than to fight.
General Benedict Arnold was named military governor of Philadelphia, but Congress recommended a court-martial when Arnold's integrity was called into question.
He felt that he'd been given a very raw deal.
He will soon take on a new role, that of traitor.
Were it not for his treason, he would almost undoubtedly be one of the most celebrated American commanders of all of the American Revolution.
December 1779. As the fourth year of the American Revolution comes to an end, the war is at a stalemate. Many battles have been won and lost, but neither side has taken the advantage. British General Henry Clinton has a firm grip on New York City, but the King's forces have been unable to crush the rebellion, as George Washington's army continues to hold them in check. Now camped 30 miles to the west of New York City, the Americans are bracing themselves for another long winter. 13,000 strong, they settle into their quarters at Morristown, New Jersey. It has been 2 years since the Continental Army survived the legendary conditions at Valley Forge, but this winter will surpass all others.
The winter encampment in Morristown was a lot harder than the encampment in Valley Forge. Valley Forge seems to get all the press, but Morristown was really dire straits.
Valley Forge was a disaster because of the lack of supplies and the bungling. Morristown was the elements. It was said to be the worst winter in the history of North America. There were 26 snowstorms, 6 of blizzard proportions. It was so cold that in the month of January, on all but 2 days, the temperature was below freezing.
This is truly the winter that tries men's souls. At Valley Forge, it took 4 weeks to build the Army's cabins. But at Morristown, blizzard conditions slow the progress, and the construction takes months. Many soldiers are forced to sleep under canvas tents or lie in the snow. Compounding the soldiers' suffering is the fact that once again, food is in critically short supply.
The countryside is covered with snow, but really the areas of Morristown just does not have enough food to supply the Army.
Soldiers fill their diaries with accounts of the cruel conditions.
We were absolutely, literally starved. I do solemnly swear that I did not put a morsel in my mouth for 4 days and as many nights, except a little black birch bark, which I gnawed off a stick of wood. I saw several of the men roast their old shoes and eat them. Private Joseph Plum Martin.
It is yet another low point in Washington's career. His desk piles high with letters from generals pleading for supplies. Washington petitions Congress for aid, but to no avail.
Inflation had soared to hundreds of %. The American money was practically worthless. And they had a hard time with taxes on the states, getting people to pay their taxes. Congress was nearly bankrupt. So it's catch as catch can.
With no food and few supplies, Washington faces the very real possibility of being forced to dissolve his army. Charleston, South Carolina. 800 miles to the south, it is a very different winter. 4 years into the war, the South is mostly untouched. Here in the bustling hub of commerce and trade, life goes on undisturbed. The wealthy partake heartily in the pleasantries of social life. Dances and dinners fill the evenings, a far cry from the hardships faced by an army fighting for their liberty. Charleston has been threatened only once by the British. A poorly executed attack in 1776 that was easily fended off. From the looks of it, Charleston is hardly part of a nation at war. All that is about to change. Across the ocean in England, a new strategy for the war is about to be unleashed. In the halls of Parliament, it has been a year scarred by angry debate. The British national debt has soared to over £160 million, due in large part to the prolonged war, and there is no end in sight.
I don't think anyone is more surprised than the British that they haven't won yet. They're a very wealthy nation. They have the most professionally trained army, and they have the most powerful navy in the world.
The question they're asking is, why isn't this thing over yet? This should have been an easy victory. And so there are questions about what to do next.
The figureheads of British leadership, like Prime Minister Lord North, are frequent targets in the daily papers, held responsible for a costly and increasingly unpopular war. A war where the stakes have been raised by the entrance of their archenemy, France, into the fight, on the American side.
Surrendering American independence is one thing, and that's something that has to be dealt with. But allowing France to emerge from this conflict with the upper hand is wholly unacceptable to the entire political nation, to all of the governing elite.
Under the gun now to turn the course of the fight, British policymakers unveil a dramatic new direction for the war. It becomes known as the Southern Strategy.
The British look at the map of the colonies and they think, well, we know Boston is just a hotbed, forget them. That was the first place we lost. We have these centers in New York, temporarily in Philadelphia, but the countryside is too unpredictable.
British hoped in the South to establish a foothold in North America that could be a permanent foothold. Here is the wealthiest part of the 13 colonies, right? Here are the major source of export goods, tobacco and grain and rice and indigo and naval stores, right? All of these come from the southern colonies.
The key to the British Southern Strategy is the belief that their efforts will be supported by loyalists, the Americans still loyal to the Crown. The British believe they will be received as liberators, and that thousands of loyalist militia will pour out and join their cause.
The assumption was that most colonists, given the chance, would be loyalists. By moving south, they were moving to an area where they hoped that they could finally restore British authority and put the loyalists in charge.
All that remains now is putting their plan into action. December 26, 1779, British headquarters, New York City. With his orders from the British ministry now in hand, Commander-in-Chief Henry Clinton makes preparations to carry them out. This is Clinton's first offensive action, one that is so important that he himself will lead the assault. But he is filled with a sense of foreboding. Clinton has watched 2 other British commanders fail at winning this war, and doesn't want his name added to the list.
If the seizure of the other southern states doesn't work, it's not clear what will work. Clinton is as concerned with how his actions will be interpreted, how he will be judged, that awareness of, if I don't handle this right, what's this going to mean for my reputation back at home?
The general's neck is squarely on the line. His success or failure could determine the outcome of the war, and no one knows it better than Clinton himself.
This is the most important hour Britain ever knew. If we lose it, we shall never see such another. British General Henry Clinton.
The British leave New York City with more than 100 ships and a force of 8,700, roughly 1/3 of the British Army in America. Their destination, Charleston, South Carolina. News that the British fleet has set sail reaches Washington in Morristown, New Jersey. But the commander-in-chief is powerless. A cruel winter march south is no option for his starving army. He must let the British go. Charleston will have to fend for itself. January 1780. The British have launched an armada out of New York City. 8,700 soldiers heading for a southern offensive in Charleston, South Carolina. But Washington, with no navy, and his army snowed in at Morristown by the worst winter the war has seen, cannot follow, leaving Charleston and his southern army to fend for themselves. 800 miles south of Washington's winter camp, Benjamin Lincoln, the new commander of the Continental Southern Army, is assuming his duties. The Major General was dispatched south 3 months earlier by Washington himself and is now in command of nearly 2,400 soldiers. But the Massachusetts farmer is an unlikely choice for a commander.
Benjamin Lincoln is one of the most interesting generals, perhaps, of the entire American Revolution. He's sort of a paradox. Lincoln is a rotund New England Continental Army officer. He suffers from sleep apnea, oftentimes falling asleep at the most inopportune moments, and he does not possess the kind of battlefield charisma that one would want in a combat commander. He is, however, a masterful compromiser. He is a great politician, and in large measure this helps explain the reason that he assumes command of the Southern Department.
Lincoln's task is first and foremost the defense of Charleston, South Carolina, the city known as the Jewel of the South. Clustered on a low, sandy spit of land, Charleston sits on a peninsula at the junction of the Ashley and Cooper rivers. It is the 4th largest city in America, with 12,000 residents. Its deep water harbor makes Charleston the South's most important port. Rice, indigo, and naval stores leave daily, headed to Europe and the West Indies.
You're looking at one of the richest sections of the colonies. Charleston, by value of its export, is the richest port in America at the time.
And nature has endowed Charleston with a superior defensive position. Surrounded by impassable swamps teeming with malaria-ridden mosquitoes, the terrain is foreboding to any who dare take her. January 10th, 1780. Benjamin Lincoln receives a dispatch from spotters along the coast. A massive British force is approaching. With his command barely underway, Lincoln will have to face down England's army. Lincoln immediately petitioned South Carolina's government to recruit and raise more troops. But his request is denied. It is not the first time the South Carolinians have frustrated the Patriot cause. Many view the colony's citizens as reluctant revolutionaries, voting for independence only under tremendous pressure from the other colonies. And on the floor of the Continental Congress, South Carolina's seeming unwillingness to raise troops has ignited heated debates.
How can South Carolina expect us to send our men to their support when they will do nothing for themselves?
The state of South Carolina may have thought we neglected them, but we know they neglected themselves.
But in this case, losing the coastal port of Charleston to the British would be too great an economic blow. So Congress promises General Lincoln 3,000 additional troops from Virginia and North Carolina, with a march of 500 miles ahead of them. It is unlikely the reinforcements will arrive in time. With his back against the wall, the New Englander proposes a last-ditch idea to South Carolina's government. Arm 1,500 black slaves and turn them into soldiers. If they refuse, Lincoln will leave Charleston to the British. South Carolina's response is immediate. The request is denied as totally impractical.
Even though their backs were to the wall when the British Army moved south, they could not bear the risk of putting weapons in the arms of black men.
They were very concerned about what might happen should they start arming their slaves. I mean, to arm those people you have formerly held in captivity might be a suicidal thing to do, and they understood this.
With reinforcements hundreds of miles away and no black recruits, the defense of Charleston is looking more and more futile.
At that point, Lincoln's choice was either to get the army out of the city and give it up, or to stay in the city. In the best of all possible worlds, Lincoln should have left Charleston and gone to the countryside.
But the general's sense of honor and duty prevents him from abandoning his post, and retreat, however wise, would open him to accusations of cowardice. Undermanned, undersupplied, and unsupported, Lincoln will make his stand at Charleston. He communicates his plight to his commander-in-chief, General Washington.
We remain unsupported by troops, unsupplied, and what adds to the unhappiness is the little prospect that our affairs will speedily be in a better channel. General Benjamin Lincoln.
But from New Jersey, there is little Washington can do. With his army half a country away and nearly starving, moving his sizable force south is out of the question.
Washington wants to send men from Morristown. He can't send men because the men he wants to send have no shoes. They can't walk, so no army is sent.
February 11th, 1780. After a harrowing journey on the frigid, wind-swept seas of the Atlantic, British General Henry Clinton and his force of nearly 9,000 soldiers finally reached their destination, landing 20 miles south of Charleston. The army now unloads and begins its northward march. On February 16th, the British crossed the Stono River, taking control of James Island, which sits right across the harbor from Charleston. Then, finally, at the end of March, crossed the Ashley River in force. The British Southern campaign is underway, and the city of Charleston is in their sights. The British Army has set out on a new course in the War for Independence, taking the fight to the southern colonies of America. Now, 8,700 soldiers, roughly one-third of the British Army in America, have come ashore in South Carolina, and under the command of General Henry Clinton have begun their push to close in on their goal, Charleston. At his headquarters within the city, General Benjamin Lincoln readies himself for the British assault. There is no sign of the 3,000 soldiers promised by Congress a month earlier, and his army is severely outnumbered. So the general prepares for his defense the only way he knows how. Lincoln rolls up his sleeves and grabs a shovel. The Massachusetts farmer throws his back into his command, working day and night right beside his men. The Americans build earthen walls, lay trenches, and create as many obstacles as possible, all designed to slow the progress of the British Army. But Lincoln knows that unless there are reinforcements, the outcome of this fight is inevitable. With the soldiers' resolve, Lincoln writes once again to his commander-in-chief, George Washington.
I can promise you nothing but a disposition to serve my country and to defend Charleston as long as opposition can be any avail. General Benjamin Lincoln.
April 1st, 1780, Day 1. 800 yards west of the American fortifications at Charleston, the British begin their offensive with a shovel rather than a cannon. General Clinton's goal is to take Charleston intact. If he destroys the town, he fears the citizens will refuse the Crown's authority. Instead, he will surround Charleston and conduct a highly structured, formal assault on the city. A siege.
A siege is a very methodical and time-consuming reduction of a strategic place. The engineers will begin to dig what is called the first parallel. Parallel trenches are essentially concentric circles dug around the post. The siege is rather similar to an incremental tightening of a noose.
Helping to construct the first British parallel is a labor force that is seeking its own freedom in the War of Independence, slaves who have joined the British side. They have come from the countryside, enticed by the Philipsburg Proclamation, a renewal of Lord Dunmore's 1775 edict. It offers freedom and land to any slave who joins the British cause.
The British understood the colonies. They knew that South Carolina's population, the majority of its population, was African American slaves. And they also knew that these African American slaves were a potential fifth column. If you think about it for a moment, if you are an army opposing an enemy and you know that that enemy holds under its grip people who are enslaved, and you know darn well that those people don't want to be enslaved and would do anything within their power to break that grip, it's only natural that you would use that to your advantage. And that's precisely what the British did.
Slaves can't just walk off the plantation and enlist with the British. They have to escape. For the slave families, it is a difficult and dangerous decision.
Some slaves are very likely to make the decision to run to the British, while others will stay on the plantation, say, no, I'm not willing to take the chance. I'll probably end up getting shot anyway. Those are the kinds of calculations that have to be made plantation by plantation, family by family.
Over time, thousands of slaves escape and go to the British lines to fight for their freedom.
When you are presented with a choice of staying in slavery or the very real possibility of having the bonds of slavery broken, that's no choice. So that slaves were often ready to throw in their lot with the British, even if they didn't know precisely what might happen, because, you know, it's not the choices that you want, but it's the choice that you have.
The siege of Charleston enters its 5th day, and the methodical work of the British assault continues. Nights are spent digging trenches, and by sunrise, each side wakes up just a little bit closer to the other. From his barracks in Charleston, an anonymous American soldier is just beginning to feel the effects of the attack and charts the British progress.
Last night, the enemy continued their approaches. They erected a battery for 12 cannon. The batteries have thrown several shots into town, by which one of the inhabitants in King Street was killed.
Day 7. From the north comes the news American General Benjamin Lincoln has been waiting for. Relief is on the way. The Continental soldiers promised by Congress have arrived and are making their way into the city. Marching double time, they have made the 505-mile journey from Virginia in just 30 days. Charleston citizens greet the soldiers with cheers and the hourly pealing of bells. The celebration on the streets of Charleston stands in stark contrast to the somber mood of Benjamin Lincoln's headquarters. Rather than the 3,000 soldiers promised, the Virginians number just 750. These numbers fall far too short. Bearing down on the city are 10,000 British redcoats. Day 8. The British take their aim on Charleston Harbor as a group of warships runs the narrow channel under cannon fire from Fort Moultrie, the American outpost protecting the inlet. A Hessian soldier fighting on the British side witnesses the scene from the shore.
It was the most majestic, beautiful spectacle that one can imagine. The fort was veiled in fire and smoke, and the roar of 43 heavy guns resembled a terrible thunderstorm. Despite all dangers threatening the fleet, it sailed quite slowly past the fort with colors flying proudly. Captain Johann Ewald.
With his fleet now safely in Charleston Harbor, Henry Clinton's forces encircle nearly all of the city. Day 10. From their position of strength, the British now send the Americans an ultimatum: give up the fight and surrender. General Lincoln's response is immediate. He will not yield his post.
The protocol of war at that time mandated that the defending commander keep the fight up at least long enough to meet the minimal dictates of honor in that time. So the besieged commander would always routinely decline the first offer of surrender.
British General Henry Clinton has gotten the response he expected. It strengthens his resolve.
They will now defend the town, and when we take it, we shall take all in it. Sir Henry Clinton.
Day 14. The British parallels continue creeping closer and closer to Charleston. Shelling fills the days as hot lead rains on the town. Just one escape path remains open to the Americans. Along the Cooper River to a crossroads called Monk's Corner. Running through a series of shallow crossings along the river's edge, the route serves as the last communication link between Charleston and the South Carolina backcountry. A lone Continental garrison is stationed at Monk's Corner. Their charge is a vital one: keep the route open. For the British, it is the last target needed to encircle the city. The man charged with taking the post is a brash, young, and vicious cavalryman, Banastre Tarleton. The 24-year-old Tarleton is as ambitious as they come. Described as full of enterprise and spirit and anxious of every opportunity of distinguishing himself, he has risen quickly through the British ranks.
Banastre Tarleton is one of Clinton's most capable subordinate commanders. He is a dashing young cavalry commander, and he understands how to fight in this theater. But his actions are all directed at the decisive destruction of enemy combat power.
Tarleton is known for his daring, for moving his cavalry quickly, quick hits. He's also known for no restraint.
At Monk's Corner, Tarleton unleashes a daring plan on the Americans. A surprise attack. Under the cover of night, Tarleton and his men make their move. They strike fast, hard, and without mercy. catching the Continental garrison completely off guard. In the thick of the attack, an American officer's pleas for surrender are met with a saber. Monk's Corner becomes Tarleton's calling card. It is not the last time the Americans will face the brash cavalry officer. The final road out of Charleston is now closed. April 1780. The siege of Charleston, South Carolina enters its third week, with the British painstakingly inching their way towards the city's continental defenses. With the last road out now shut down, British General Clinton begins tightening his noose around the city's very neck. Day 18. Behind the defensive line, there is the terrifying and constant barrage of cannon fire. For an anonymous Continental soldier, the strain of the siege is beginning to show.
The enemy continued firing from their cannon, mortars, and small arms. A sentinel near the advanced redoubt had his arm shut off by one of our own cannon. The enemy continued to approach. And we hear that our cavalry have been defeated and that we lost between 20 and 30 killed and wounded among them.
It's hard for us today to imagine what it's like to be inside a city that's being besieged. You're worrying about these incessant artillery shells coming in, and you're probably worrying all the time about what eventually is going to happen. What's going to happen when the enemy gets in here?
Day 21. In the American headquarters, General Benjamin Lincoln finds himself in the middle of an angry debate. Some of his officers want to take a desperate action, a dangerous water retreat under cover of night.
Lincoln knows, really, he should leave the city. It was heated, a very heated confrontation.
But with the British fleet sitting just off the city, moving his force across a river would be suicide. So Lincoln sends out a flag of truce and a request for a 6-hour break from fighting. Having already rejected British General Clinton's offer of surrender, Lincoln now proposes his own terms. He will give up Charleston, and in return, his forces will be allowed to retreat for 10 days unmolested, with its arms, military stores, and baggage. In addition, he asks for the guaranteed protection of the residents' property. Those who wanted could sell their goods off and leave the city. It would be a free evacuation with the honors of war, the most lenient surrender in a formal siege. But British General Clinton will have none of it. His goal is complete capitulation by the Americans. He returns the note and includes his terms: a total surrender.
A total surrender or an unconditional surrender is perhaps one of the most humiliating defeats that an enemy can suffer. A commander will not make an offer or demand a total surrender or unconditional surrender unless he is confident in his ability to finish the job by force of arms.
Lincoln refuses the offer. The terms, unacceptable. It will be a fight to the end. Day 30. The British parallels have closed to within 500 feet of the earthen defenses protecting Charleston. At this distance, cannon can be fired with accuracy into the city. But even at this close range, the British are still looking for some sign of the effect of their barrage, some intelligence on the mood of their enemy. Clinton's men intercept a letter from an American militiaman to his wife. It confirms the state of mind in the besieged city.
Our fares are daily declining. Nothing prevents Lincoln's surrender but a point of honor in holding out to the last extremity. This is nearly at hand, as our provisions will soon fail. The enemy have continued their approaches with vigor, and in a short time will plant the British standard on our ramparts. This will give a rude shock to the independence of America. The 13 stripes will be leveled in the dust, and I will owe my life to the clemency of a conqueror, Benjamin Smith.
Clinton publishes the letter for all his men to see and increases the cannon barrage. Day 38. In the American headquarters, Benjamin Lincoln is trying to salvage his defense, to hold out in hope of additional reinforcement or come up with some plan that might turn the course of the siege. Now, devastating news arrives from his lines. The South Carolinian militia has abandoned their posts within the city. And now the citizens of Charleston are saying that they have had enough. Major General Benjamin Lincoln, commander of the Southern Department of the Continental Army, has run out of options. The siege of Charleston has ground on for more than a month, and the British rain a constant barrage of cannon and mortar fire down upon the town. With Charleston completely surrounded, it is only a matter of time before British forces breach the defenses of the city and are able to overrun the town. Now General Clinton prepares a final offer for the Americans: complete and total surrender. Day 41. The terms of surrender reach General Benjamin Lincoln's desk, and he now faces the reality of his situation. The time has come to give up the fight, to yield his post. The British cannon finally fall silent. May 12, 1780. Surrender. America's Southern Army strikes the flag of its new nation and lays down its weapons. The entire Charleston garrison, more than 5,000 Continental soldiers and militia, are now prisoners to the British. It is the heaviest loss the Americans have suffered in the Revolution. General Benjamin Lincoln's war is over for now. He returns in defeat to his Massachusetts farm as a prisoner of the British on parole. Charleston, the jewel of the South, belongs to the King. British General Henry Clinton savors his victory. He cannot hide his optimism about a smooth and easy road to capturing the other southern colonies. He sends word home to England.
I hope I am not too sanguine when I say that both the Carolinas are conquered in Charleston. British General Henry Clinton.
In England, the news from America is cause for a much overdue celebration. It has been 3 years since their army, the most powerful in the world, has had such a decisive win. finally, the tide of war is turning. The Southern strategy is a seeming success. Back in the American headquarters at Morristown, celebration is the last thing on George Washington's mind. The final dispatch from Charleston has arrived. His Southern army is now lost. It is another defeat for the Americans, one that the commander-in-chief had been powerless to stop. The brutal winter of 1780 has taken a mighty toll on his army.
It was a long winter. It snowed in May. Soldiers are starving.
The dire conditions have pushed some to the very edge. Dissension is growing in the ranks. Insubordination runs rampant. Some soldiers even threaten to take matters into their own hands, to mutiny. It is a decisive and dangerous moment for the Continental Army. George Washington must step forward and restore order. The commander-in-chief carefully chooses his moment to take action. May 26, 1780. 8 nooses, prepared for 8 men. They are soldiers brought here on a variety of charges: insubordination, forging documents, theft. All are sentenced to death. Washington orders the execution be held before the entire camp, for all of his men to see. It is a carefully choreographed event.
Washington wanted to use punishment, a capital punishment, particularly sparingly, but he also knew it was great theater.
All 8 were put on top of the gallows. Nooses were put around their heads. Their graves had been dug in front of the gallows, and their coffins, which he ordered manufactured, placed next to the graves.
The goal of a public execution is to instill awe in the audience, awe for the power of military authority. But you can make it into better theater by pardoning and offering a last-minute reprieve.
As they were about to be hung, a soldier stepped forward from the crowd. Reprieve. Reprieve from the commander-in-chief. 7 of the 8 were freed.
So you have both awe in the punishment and then gratitude for the reprieve, and the audience experience all of these things at the same time.
On this day, just one man will hang for his crimes. It is a warning to all in Washington's army of the consequence for insubordination. For Washington, these are some of the darkest days. The British Southern strategy flourishes, while simultaneously it looks as if the American army is coming undone at the seams. And without the army, there is no revolution.
I find our prospects are infinitely worse than they have been at any other period of the war. I look forward to the consequences with an anxiety not to be described. George Washington.
The commander-in-chief cannot help but question the future of the war he once called this glorious cause. Next time on The Revolution, Daniel Morgan's cat-and-mouse guerrilla tactics will draw the British deep into unknown southern territory.
He knows he can lead the British Army into indecisive conflicts that's going to spread the British Army thin.
This was the way wars were fought in the southern backcountry. This was not the way warfare was supposed to be conducted.
He really is a roughneck frontiersman. Hard drinking, hard fighting. He really is the stuff of fiction.